Have you ever thought that you have what it takes to be a part of the military? Many assume that they do in fact have what it takes to be a part of and thrive within today's military. While that may prove true for some, men and women with families, there is an astronomical amount of families that are forced to split each year because of the strain that the military poses on marriages and family life. Currently, I'm in year 6 of my enlistment, and I've had to attend various trainings and deploy 3 times to Kuwait, Japan, and Afghanistan. The total amount of time I've spent away from my family is about 3 years, which is half of my entire enlistment. I've had to miss things like my child's birth, I've had to leave my wife 8 months pregnant, and I've had to resolve many issues within my relationship from thousands of miles away. The overall divorce rate in the military is very high, and USA Today author Greg Zaruya discusses in an article that in 2011 the military divorce rate was at its highest since 1999 at 3.7%, when over 30,000 military marriages ended. Speculation points towards the withdrawal of troops in Afghanistan and Iraq coming back to their families, whereas those families generally aren't used to spending the extended periods of time together, and because of the withdrawals of troops, they are required and allowed to spend that extra time together. The civilian divorce rate is 3.5%, and it's been on the decline since the year 2000, whereas the military has been on the incline in recent years. Split marriages are most common between enlisted women in the military. In 2011, 1 in every 10 marriages between enlisted women ended. In an article in the Military Divorce Guide, it talks about how in 2004, the military divorce rate doubled whenever the war escalated to full force. Because of this, spouses were often not talking to each other for extended periods of time, even months, and the spouses left at home began to feel taken advantage of and feel that they were taken for granted, which eventually led to resentment for essentially being left alone and having to raise a family by themselves. Also, many military members that are deployed find their spouses creating friendships with opposite sex, and unfortunately that can lead to broken vows, which later on leads to divorce. Also, traumatic experiences are something that most military men and women have to endure whenever they go on deployment. Things such as seeing someone get shot or someone die in front of them, or even just an explosion near them, can cause psychological damage to many men and women, and research has shown that whenever something like that happens, it can make it difficult to maintain a stable relationship. USA Today author Karen Peterson describes today's military as a predominantly young but married with children force. She talks about the disadvantages of recruiting married military members is that military members coming into the service are required or expected to support their family with a salary that's more suitable for single personnel who live in the barracks. Because of this, many young military members who have families are forced to have second jobs, or if that's not the case, then they come home at nighttime and provide child care while their spouse goes out and works at what most likely is a minimum wage job. The military also moves on average every 2.9 years, which is twice the amount of the average civilian. Military children are affected by the stress and inconsistency that the military life imposes. In an article in the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, there's issues discussed like deployment-related stress in children, like parental separation and family reunification, as well as reintegration whenever a parent has to deploy or comes back from deployment. It imposes a hardship on these children. Also, because of the frequent moves, that interferes with the relationships and friendships that child has gained. And also, they have to adapt to many different schools and be the new kid at school more often than most regular children. A lot of times, military parents come back from deployment, and a lot of them have some kind of combat-related injury, and the child has to deal with that. And also, some parents come back and the child has to endure the death of that parent. Research also shows that during the Iraq and Afghanistan war, there's been a dramatic increase in child maltreatment and child neglect. The last thing I want to talk about is regardless of what your situation is, if you're a single parent in the military, you're expected to and required to deploy, like I said, regardless of what the circumstance may be. Army Lieutenant and author Jessica Scott published an article, and in there she notes that 30,000 single mothers have deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and that's not even including the amount of single fathers who have had to do the same thing. The military divorce rate, or divorce, affects women at 3 times the amount it affects men. Divorces within the military often lead to extensive custody battles to either regain or retain their custody of their child whenever they deploy or whenever they come back from deployment, because there's no federal legislation that protects the military from losing custody of that child. So what that means is there's a lot of single military members losing custody of their children, and that can come back on the children and provide them with an unstable environment. So I've gone over many facts and statistics that support the high divorce rate within the military, the stress that the military can impose on children, as well as how difficult it can be to be a single parent and in the military. I'm not trying to stray your decision from, serving your country honorably and joining the military, but I am trying to illustrate the negative effects that the military can pose on marriages, families, children, as well as single parents. The main standpoint I want to reiterate is that if you're married and thinking of joining the military, or even if you're in the military and contemplating marriage, to make sure that your spouse or soon-to-be has what it takes to be a part of something uncertain, continuous, and often lonely, and make sure they have what it takes to make that commitment. Thank you.
One, two, three, four.